Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new malicious compliance content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
First one is titled, I have to claim mileage from the office, not home? Okay. Seen a few travel ones today and was reminded of this. I used to be sent out on training a few times a year and I could claim mileage at a set rate per mile. At the time, most people working at this place lived in a town 5 miles north of the office and training tended to be in a large city about 60 miles south of the office. At the time I lived halfway between the office and the city, so 30 miles south of the office, 30 miles north of the city where training was, so I was only claiming 60 miles expenses for every trip, home city home, rather than 120 miles, office city office. So finance went on a cost-saving drive and announced that we had to claim mileage office city office, with their reasoning being that the majority of staff who lived 5 miles north would have been paying for their own fuel to get to the office, so they shouldn't be claiming those extra 5 miles by 2 on a training day. I understood the reasoning for it, but assumed that as I was so far south, they'd still accept the 60-mile claim from me. Boy was I wrong, and I was completely reamed out the next time I put in a claim. Despite pointing out I was saving them money, I was accused of trying to defraud the company. I was told to redo my claim sheet and that they wouldn't put a formal warning on my employee file this time. So instead of taking it higher, I was now being paid double in mileage and saving 60 miles of fuel on not driving to the office on training days. I complied. A few months later my boss wasn't in, so I had to get her boss to sign my travel expenses. He asked why I was claiming office city office when I lived so much closer. I explained what had happened and he was upset, but signed it and told me he'd take it to finance for me as he was heading that way. A policy amendment was emailed out to all staff later that day, stating that on training days we were to claim either home city home or office city office, whichever was the shorter. Ah well, the extra money was nice when I got it. Next one is titled, Customer was concerned about her turtle. I used to be a pool technician. Part of my weekly service route included a local historical mansion. No one lived in the actual mansion as it was used for tours and stuff, but the groundskeeper lived on site in a maintenance shed converted into a house. She was different. She believed heavily in holistic medicine and performed seances. She also had a pet turtle that she liked to let swim around in the pool. The pool itself was a match for the house. Old, ugly, and ginormous. Being that it was old and didn't have the best filtration system, and that somehow in a huge meticulously maintained garden this pool had zero shade, it required a good deal of chlorine to keep the water clear. I honestly hated dealing with this place because everything there was inconvenient. So summer comes around, it's getting crazy hot, so groundskeeper lady decides she wants to let her pet turtle go for a dip in the pool to beat the heat. No problem, I guess. The turtle looks kinda cute swimming around in the pool while I school stuff out of it. I go ask the groundskeeper what she wants me to do with her pet while I add chemicals, and she asks me not to add anything so as to not hurt him. Also not a problem, I'll just leave a case of chlorine so she can add it when her turtle is finished. I come back the following week and the case of chlorine is still full. Cue me explaining to her that if she doesn't add the chemicals this 100,000+ gallon pool is gonna turn green. She tells me she doesn't want to add chemicals because it's bad for her garden and the pool, etc. And that she can deal with the pool turning a little murky. So I cover my own butt by leaving her with another case of chlorine and some acid and instructions of when to add the chemicals. Come back the following week, the weather's gotten hotter, and this pool is getting pretty murky. I added some water clarifier when the groundskeeper wasn't looking and left her with yet another case. They're piling up at this point, and she's billed for each oz of chemical I leave with her, and go on my way. Come back the final week, the pool is straight green. I can't even see past the surface of the water, it's bad. I set my stuff down and go knock on the groundskeeper's door. She opens it in a huff saying, yeah I know, add the chemicals. My response: "Actually, ma'am, I've come to let you know I can't work on this pool anymore. Our service contract explicitly states that we do not service green pools. If you'd like, you can call our dispatch number and they'll set me up with an appointment to come out and give you a quote for clearing out this algae. Due to the age and size of this pool, you'll be looking at a minimum of 20 hours of labor. At $90 per hour. I made sure to document every interaction I had with her, and let my boss know every action I took with that client, just so she wouldn't be able to turn it around on me when her bosses see the $2,500 bill she racked up because she wanted to let her turtles swim in their pool." Next one is titled, "Your only working area would be the changing room." Now this happened a few years back, but I still remember it clear as day, as it was the first time I caused this much trouble during work. I was a part-time retail assistant for a retail clothing store, a rather popular one at that, but I won't state its brand name here. During the holidays, it was quite common for customers to ask for different sizes for the items on display. The usual protocol would be for me to call for someone to take the item, go to the cashier and use the machine there to check whether the item had that particular size or if any of the other local stores around this area had them. Note that there was a rule that there had to be someone working in the changing room at all times. As an employee that have worked there for a month, I already knew that most of the time no one really followed this rule as we were understaffed. So when someone asked for me to check for the size they wanted on the item, I would leave the changing room and take no more than a minute to check it. The customers didn't mind, nor did my other colleagues. The problem only came when the HR team came to do a sudden check the other day to ensure that we were working as per protocols. As luck had it, they saw me leaving the changing room whenever someone asked if an item had a particular size and told my head manager that I was breaking the protocol literally every 5 minutes. My head manager was not happy. She paged for me and told me, "Your only working area would be the changing room. Do not move from that area." I couldn't even explain myself. Alright then. For the next few weeks or so, customers were not attended to because I could only answer, "Sorry, I can't check for you." This also meant that close to none of the customers were buying anything. Head manager didn't notice because she was always busy in the back room doing admin work and was never on the ground floor. Earnings report came for the month and my God, there were only $2,000 plus worth of sales completed. This was 5 times lesser than the revenue we usually generated. We managed to get the best performing local store award from the bottom. The head manager was unable to explain herself and tried to compensate by hiring new employees. This did not work since I couldn't leave my post and none of the other employees dared to leave their post as well. Which also meant none of them knew how to use the machine to check for sizes. They were all religiously folding and refolding clothes again to look useful, but no actual sales were being made. Well, it didn't come as a surprise when the head manager was fired and HR decided that having an employee staying in the changing room at all times was a stupid rule as well. Edit, disclaimer. I may have gotten the numbers entirely wrong. But I remember our store was doing 5 times worse than how we usually did though. Next one is titled, "Doesn't Work That Way Here." A few years ago I was working in a company that was bought out by another company based in the US. Apologies to our friends over the other side of the Atlantic, but some folks over there don't get that things sometimes work differently in other countries. I've always been a bit of a hothead and I'm also a big fan of trade unions. Not long after the takeover, there were hints of some issues with the company margins. It seems the original management had hidden some costs in the takeover talks and there was a shortfall. We all got an email telling us there was going to be a 10% reduction in salaries to cover this. Now this didn't go down too well and I immediately raised the issue with local hour. They told me the decision had come from the mothership in the US and they had been told all discussions needed to go via the US. I contacted someone in the US HR team and said, "You can't do this, it breaks our laws in this country." The response was, "You work for a US company now, our rules apply." I said I was pretty certain that's not how it worked and if my salary was cut I would be taking this further and would be discussing this with my union. The person in HR said, "Do what you want, we don't recognize unions, knock yourself out." I spoke to the union office and was told exactly what to do. They effectively told me what the exact steps for MC were going to be. Sure enough, my next salary was 10% short. I immediately submitted a format grievance report stating the company was in breach of contract. No changes to my pay and conditions can be imposed without first renegotiating my contract, and I had to agree to that. The response from HR in the US was, "Let's be kind here," not backed up by an understanding of employment law in this country. I was told there was nothing I could do about it, they set the rules and that was it. The next stage of MC then kicked in. I had all their emails, I had my formal grievance and their response. I sent an email to my line manager, our HR and HR in the US, stating I considered that I had been placed in a situation where the company were in breach of contract and that I had no option other than to leave the company with immediate effect. I also stated that I classed this as constructive dismissal and would be filing a case at an employment tribunal for wrongful termination as a result. Roll the clocks on a couple of months and we are in the employment tribunal. The company has sent the head of HR across and I'm waiting there with my support from the union. We walk into the tribunal and the relevant parties are introduced, the head of HR with his smirking face, the local head of HR looking less relaxed, myself and my legal representative, a barrister. As soon as the head of HR heard I was with a barrister, his smug look evaporated. HR presented their case, and then my barrister set out every single aspect of employment law here to the tribunal. He pointed out every mistake they made, every local law they broke, that the law in the US only applied in the US, not in any other country. He pointed out that I had a long unblemished record with the company and that this case had come at a very high personal cost to me and that finding another job would need more training and could take up to a year. It took less than 10 minutes to find against the company. They had to repay the deducted wages to every single employee in this country rather than fight a significant number of similar cases. I was asked if I wanted my job back but told the tribunal I didn't feel I could work there without being subject to reprisals. I was awarded the maximum basic award and a significant compensatory award of a full year's salary, which let me take a year out to complete some additional technical training at their expense. I also got a glowing reference for my next employer. It cost me nothing for my barrister, that was all funded by the union. Those guys are the royalty of applying malicious compliance. They can apply the law down to its very finest point. Last one is titled, "Papers Please." For several years I was a field scientist for an environmental company who was a contractor for one of the major oil corporations. The oil corporation was absolutely nuts about safety procedures, not out of a desire to protect people, but to limit their legal liability. We were required to have government safety certification as well as corporate safety certification and to be able to present this certification at any time. My company risked losing our contract with them if we did not adhere to the often absurd safety requirements. One day I was scheduled to be on a particular job site alone and word came down the chain of command that I was going to have a corporate safety manager visit me to observe me working. This wasn't any manager though. He was a big shot who oversaw a 7-state area. He could cause major trouble if I deviated from the rules in the slightest. I was on site and the manager shows up. I head over and greet him. I shake his hand and ask to see his safety certification cards before we continue. He pauses for a moment and starts rifling through his wallet. After a minute, he can only provide one of the 2 necessary safety cards. I inform him that I cannot allow him on site without proof of safety certification. He replies, hoisted by my own petard, turns on his heel and leaves. I finished up the job quickly and safely and returned to the office. When I got back, everyone had already heard what happened and my manager congratulated me on making the company look good and for having the balls to kick one of the top managers of a multi-billion-dollar company off of a job site. Thanks for listening.